Hello and welcome. Today's project is Dietary Choices for Mental Clarity.
So in this video, we're talking about diet and the beginning steps in my recovery, and the diet I chose to take on because I was feeling like at the time I was eating pasta and pizza. But since I was going through this recovery and meditating and doing body scan meditations and things like that, I became more aware of my feelings. I became more aware of my moods. I became more aware of my body in general. So I remember we went out one weekend and I remember one day we had pizza, and then the next day we had pasta, and then I came to you and I was like, well,
You feel lethargic,
yeah.
sleepy, and a bit moody, just not feeling the greatest. And yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't feeling good at all. When I eat foods like that, I get foggy mind, I get irritable, I get restless, and I remember always feeling hangry all the time. I was always hungry and then frustrated, and then we'd go to McDonald's and I would get like poutine or something.
Yeah.
And I just knew, because based off how I was feeling, that I needed to change my diet. And so then I went on, I found a video actually of Dr. Peterson on a podcast. He was talking about how he was on a diet called the carnivore diet. And I was so intrigued because he said all of a sudden he had mental clarity. All of his diseases and mood swings went away. He felt happier. His depression went away. Things like that.
Waking up in the morning makes a big difference.
Waking up in the morning with less inflammation, things like that. So that caught my attention. And then he mentioned carbohydrates, and they were talking about carbohydrates. And then I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, carbohydrates. Yeah, the pizza, the pasta,
potatoes,
rice. And I was like, you know what? This is the next challenge for me, because I was always looking for challenges. The challenges would be meditating, disciplinary challenges. So I knew that the diet thing was the next challenge. And I first began the diet first. I knew from the beginning that
you found the correlation between carbs and how you felt.
Right.
I guess that's where it all began.
But I had an open mind though.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, I was still skeptical about meat and fats and things like that. As we live in the Western culture, we kind of grew up with these poor beliefs that fats and meats are not good for you. So it was hard to get around that. So at the beginning it was, feeling is understanding, right? So
fats are scary. That's how we're raised to believe that fats are not good for you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I find now is that in the media and when you're just having conversation with people, eating fat, dietary fat somehow is connected to being fat. And that's a big problem, right? Mm. And that's one of the things I notice about people all the time. And they said eating fats, eating fatty foods somehow equals to being physically fat. Mm-hmm. And somehow we have managed to find a correlation between the two. And then obviously it's a cautionary tale when you decide to abandon other foods and start focusing on fats, mm-hmm. right?
So I started the diet 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago February, so it's almost exactly 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I noticed changes right away, but what about the diet? What are the changes you saw in me that you decided to go on the diet after?
So I think you started slow. You started, cutting down some carbs. You kept some. You had trouble letting go of some vegetables, and obviously, with good cause. And then what I noticed about you the most was how your mood changed. Like, I remember you being a little bit irritable at some times of the day, and then you definitely had hanger issues, and 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 we all get hangry, keto, carnivore, otherwise. When you're angry, when you're hungry, you're hungry. But it's the frequency that was alarming, right? And then it's you and I were programmed to require food 3 times a day, and then when that time shifts, you get a little moody. It happens to me, it happens to everybody. And then when you wake up, I notice when he wakes up, he's really lethargic. You know, he rolls around in the bed for a little bit because you just don't have the energy to kick out of bed and start your day. I noticed that changed a lot. Like, he would roll out of the bed at the sound of the alarm, and he would just start his day when I couldn't do the same. And then I noticed that about him. And what else?
You know, I was doing a lot of things to benefit my health. Like, I was doing the Wim Hof method, I was doing meditations, I was exercising, but there seemed to be a missing piece to the puzzle. Like, I still felt foggy minded. I still had frustration, irritability building up, like this excess energy. And so I knew diet was the next thing. And so as soon as I started the diet, like Maggie says, I started to wake up with a clear mind. I started to have more energy, and I usually got the 2 p.m. Wall. I usually hit that wall, and so that wall just completely went away. The less carbs I consumed. So, what were the foods that what are the foods that you began with? So that you guys can understand.
So when I started keto, unlike him, when I started keto, he's been on keto for a while, so I knew what he was eating, and but everyone is different. The foods that work for him doesn't necessarily work for me, and vice versa. So I think I started with eliminating the big carbs, like pasta or pizza or rice. I mean, I grew up in a South Asian culture, so we eat a lot of rice 3 times a day, every day. And that's a lot of rice. So I started off with cutting that off. So I cut off those big carb portions first, but it still kept a lot of the vegetables and fruits. So I still kept a lot of them. I still kept eating bananas or mangoes, a large portion of the berries, and mostly vegetables. I kept my vegetables because, that's the way we are raised. We are raised to think, we need lots and lots of vegetables to have a balanced diet, which is fine, and I retain my vegetables. I just cut off all the big carb portions. And then eventually, what did we do eventually after that? Well, this is a while back.
We started off like anybody starting a diet. You start off bad. You're not good at it. Like, we weren't good at a ketogenic diet. We still ate those keto bars from the stores. Yeah. And I wasn't eating enough fats for a long time because there was still this belief within me that don't eat fat. There was that voice. So in this video, we want to make it clear to you that we're not saying this is the way, right? This is the diet. Yeah. I had to really judge the foods as I went, like what was really working for me. And I found that the more I cut things out, like dark chocolate, I cut that out. I cut like those keto bars out. I was cutting berries out and things like that. And I found the dairy as well. I was finding that the less I was consuming, the better I felt. But also, like, I started to add things and take away things. So you kind of have to gauge it. But I just recommend we recommend this diet, right?
Well, this is not an instructional video.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talking about what works for us. And even between the two of us, it's different. What works for each of us is different. Like, even though we are on the ketogenic diet, he eats some of the things that I don't, and I eat some of the things that he wouldn't. So
Yeah.
I think the point here is that you need to learn to listen to your body,
Yeah.
right? And you need to take caution about what you put into your body.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to that fundamental respect for yourself and your body. This shell that allows you to walk around, move, and do your day-to-day activities. And it's about giving something back to yourself. It's about being careful about how you treat your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to our next topic about discipline and how discipline affects your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. It was difficult because I had to get over my emotional attachment to sugars. Even though I wasn't a big sugar eater, I found that our body, when we consume breads and pastas and pizzas, it converts that to glucose. And so I noticed that when I went on keto, I started to consume dark chocolate a lot because I was making up for the withdrawal of all of those carbohydrates. And so that's why I stopped eating dark chocolate, is because I knew that I was grabbing onto that addiction that I had with like the carbohydrates.
That's the thing about going into diets. A lot of the times we instead of eliminating, we tend to substitute things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you stop eating carbs, you tend to substitute that with other things that could be fatty or has a lot of proteins in it, but doesn't necessarily mean they're good. Mm-hmm. We like those keto bars. I mean, I'm sure there are good brands out there today. We don't know. But at the time when we started, these tiny bars are made of hundreds of ingredients in them. Mm-hmm. And then I like those keto shakes, like, because I had trouble eating about 70% fat, 60 to 70% fat in one meal. Mm-hmm. So I started drinking those keto shakes that would meet those requirements, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about when you switch to a diet, you get those options from the grocery store instead of adjusting your lifestyle. You adjust your food, but you don't really adjust your lifestyle, right?
So what about keto? What about it is healthy? Like why choose it? And I sort of mentioned this at the beginning because of the inflammation and because of the you're not bombarding your system with a lot of processed junk that our ancestors didn't eat. So talk a little bit about why exactly is keto good for our bodies, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the science that goes into it, which if you want to, we're willing to do another video about it if you're interested in it. Mm-hmm, but for the purpose of anxiety and mental clarity and your mental health, number one thing about any diet, if you are true to it, if you're true to yourself, is that the discipline it brings to you. Mm-hmm. So every time you're on a strict diet, you're watching what you eat. And when people offer you food, you think twice before you're accepting it. And if you're having a bad mood, a lot of us do, we go eat. If we're stressed out, we eat. But controlling those instincts, it builds self-respect.
That's true, yeah. It builds self-respect, but also if you're suffering from health anxiety, those people who are suffering, underneath the surface, they're running unconscious patterns that are contributing to their outlook of themselves, right? Like for me, I was suffering a lot from health anxiety because I was doing a lot of unconscious bad habits, and my system was basically telling me, hey dude, you got to pay attention. And no wonder you're so sensitive. Like, you're eating junk foods, you're smoking cigarettes, you're drinking alcohol or whatever it is, right? It's like your body's trying to communicate that to you. And so with diet, as soon as I sort of went on a strict diet, I gained that self-respect because, and those beliefs that I was unhealthy were dissipating, which was really cool.
Yeah. That's the thing about diets, yeah. I mean, you don't have to be on keto to know this. You can be on any strict sustainable diet, and then you realize you start to listen to your body. You start to speak the language that your body is trying to communicate in. I feel if you're open to any food option out there, you're not listening to your body. You're basically eating because you want to eat, or because some of you could be really busy. You just, you don't even pay attention to your food. You just consume because your body because you feel the need to. But just because you feel the need to doesn't mean that's what your body is communicating. If you're stressed out, that doesn't mean you're hungry. That doesn't mean you need nutrition, right? It could mean that, you have other problems that you need to deal with. So getting your diet under control plays a big role in how you conduct your life.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest changes I felt. Like, it was a lifestyle choice that I made, and it made me conscious about the things that what my body needs, what my body doesn't need, and how I organize my day. Right?
Yeah.
It's not that we organize our day around our food. It's about giving the food its time, but eliminating food when it's not required.
Yeah, and our ancestors, like, I really want to touch on this briefly, and we recommend that you go and research this, because that's where I started. I just was like, I need to feel mentally clear. I want to feel energized throughout the day. And so I started my research, and when I dove into keto, what I discovered was a lot of information about our ancestors, how they ate. And so do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, we were reading into the Human Genome Project. Yeah, and then we have this wealth of information about how our bodies are structured, our genetic coding, and Human Genome Project gave us this wealth of information. And then what we found out was that our human genome from our Paleolithic ancestors have not changed much. But what has changed is our lifestyle. Yeah, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They did not have the food availability like we do. Our human genome was not designed for 3 times a day meals. That's something we constructed.
Yeah, and also, it's crazy, but not so crazy once you do the research, that the more fat I consumed, the more mental clarity I had and have right now. So our brains are 60 or 70% fat? 60% fat. And so, like, they tell you now, don't consume fats. Well, I mean, the more healthy, and we're talking about healthy fats here, like fish oil, avocado oil, like fat and meat, stuff like that.
Yeah, and when we say fat, it has to be healthy.
Fats.
I know there's a lot of fats out there, but it doesn't mean they're healthy. That's where your research, your hard work comes into the picture. You need to think about these things. And sorry, you were saying?
No, you're exactly on my point. It's just, I remember going to Starbucks one day, and I was on keto, and this was the first time my mental clarity, like, I felt so good. Like, this was what I was working hard for. Like, I was sitting in Starbucks on my laptop, but then I just felt mentally awake and clear, and I remember, I was beginning to eat fish and vegetables just all the time, and then chicken and vegetables, steak and vegetables, stuff like that. And I was cutting out all of the garbage, and I remember sitting there thinking, wow, this is what I really wanted to strive for, right? To feel mentally clear, to have that energy, right?
See, Brad was just talking about how 60% of our brain is made of fat, and how he felt so clear, so mentally clear, Which is funny to me because one of the biggest beliefs out there is that your brain needs carbs. And this was one of the scariest things that happened to me when I was on keto, because a large amount of people were telling me, your brain needs carbs. If you don't eat carbs, your brain doesn't work. And that was actually one of the scariest thing that happened to me on the diet. It really affected me deeply because I started doubting everything I ate because we simply cannot go on a diet thinking that our brain's gonna fail us. That's the most important organ of your body, and that's and we really dove into that research because that is one thing we cannot. You cannot trial and error your brain. And then you cannot walk around knowing that your brain function is not optimal because of the food you chose to eat, and that's a scary notion. And that's when I found out all these things about how carbs actually can be quite harmful for your brain.
They can be, and we do recommend a doctor.
Oh yes.
Here's the book, Grain Brain. We recommend that because he really lays it out in layman's terms, like these scientific studies, things like that. And why don't you talk about how the book influenced you? Because she read the book and then she cried reading it because it was so powerful.
Yeah.
Why was it?
I was moved to tears because I was so afraid that I was failing my brain. Right? That's what it came to, because we can't help not listen to people, because people don't usually speak without reason, I'd like to believe. And then I was really nervous about that. And then I read Dr. Perlmutter, and obviously a lot of other research and books, and then I found out, like, you cannot survive without your omega-3s and 6 fatty acids. And we are taught to believe cholesterol is bad, stay away from cholesterol.
Yeah.
When 25% of all cholesterol in our body is used in your brain.
Not only that, though, our cells are made up of fat and cholesterol. So think about that. Our cells are made up of... Our cell membranes...
completely fat.
Fat and cholesterol, but yet we're told not to... And that's crazy because once you do your research about keto and the carnivore diet, things like that, you're going to find that these people, their depression goes away, that they have mental clarity, they have more energy, and you can't just throw that away. You have to link the facts to the actual these practitioners, the people who practice this diet, right?
And one of the things that we always recommend to anybody who talks to us about diet, it's good that you're reading books. It doesn't matter if it supports the way we eat or way you eat. We implore you to read and learn.
Yeah.
And but the caution is, go to the original papers, go to the publications, check them out. And it's not about reading the abstract and reading the conclusion. We want you to go and read the methods. Read who they did this research on. See how these scientists lay out the information. Look into what they're not laying out. Yeah. Make sure that they're being accountable for the things they're saying. A lot of the things happen in the research world. I came from a research background. I came from a neurobiological research background, and there are fabulous research being published out there, and such brilliant people. But you have to also remember those who publish, because it's their livelihood. They need to publish, and from that need comes unaccounted for data that is unaccounted for. And while I can sympathize with that, this is about your life. You have to take control. You have to go and read these things. It's not easy. It's very hard to get into reading these things. It's very hard. So be accountable for what you eat.
Yeah, and Dr. Perlmutter, he talks about how gluten sensitivity is within everybody, which blew me away.
Yeah, because what we know from the media and what we're taught in schools and things is like, oh, if you have celiac disease, you might want to cut out your gluten because you have an allergic reaction to it. But what Dr. Perlmutter, and this doesn't come from out of nowhere. He lays out the research for you, and it's not just him. There's a lot of research out there that supports it, and it turns out we're all allergic to gluten.
Yeah.
Because and if you think about it, it makes sense because our ancestors didn't eat grains.
Yeah.
They ate meat. And maybe some berries or something that they had available to, but food was scarce. They didn't have the kind of overabundance of food that we do.
It's only recently. So to think that our system is, what's the word? Our system is adapted for these foods. When you go to Walmart and you pick up Ritz crackers, Goldfish crackers, cereals, milks, things like that, to think that our systems are adapted to process those foods properly. These foods cause inflammation. And it was clear to me when I, like 3 months into it, not even 3 months, it was sooner than that, I felt like mentally clear because it felt like all the toxins, and I grew up eating bagels, waffles, like my diet was heavily carbohydrate. It was carbohydrate heavy, and I remember having a lot of brain fog in school, a lot of anxiety. I was sluggish all the time, and
I don't know if you want to talk about ADHD today.
ADHD as well.
Well, how can you blame little children for having ADHD when they're pumped full of sugar? And come to school and you diagnose ADHD with these children for not being able to focus because they come to school pumped full of sugar, and you expect them to sit down for how many long hours a day, and then you diagnose the children with ADHD, and it's just beyond me how these things can be enforced. And I want you to think about it if you have children, and we all were children at one point, and think back about how you felt in classes. Could you focus? And even if you could, how well?
Right? I knew when I switched onto this strict diet that I was sensitive to most foods out there. So
but you can go on a lifetime.
And you can go a lifetime without knowing as well. And also I wanted to bring up when you started, your inflammation went away, and she noticed that. So
well, it was not hard to not notice because before I went on keto, I had an old injury on my knee, and then basically I've been taking X-rays of it, say once a year when it was still fresh, and my tissues were completely healed. There was no physical injury there whatsoever. But every winter, and sometimes not in winter, sometimes I would climb downstairs and my knee would freeze on me, completely freeze, and then it was just unbelievable. It's just, it would fail me. My body failed me continuously. But then you don't think about it. You think, oh, it's winter, happens to everybody. No, it doesn't have to happen to everybody. Our bodies are such beautifully made machines. It doesn't have to. It's about what we do to our bodies. And when I went on keto, 3 months into it, I stopped getting inflammation on my knee, and I stopped feeling that feeling. And today I can run, and I wouldn't feel any pain from my knee.
Yeah, so I think the reason why we wanted to do this video is to share our journeys with keto, to share how it provided us with mental clarity and with improved health.
It's so easy to make excuses for yourself. You can tell, I don't have the privilege to focus on my food because I have kids that I need to feed, and you have to support your family. That's fine. And then you can make excuses. I'm too busy. I don't have time for this. And you can be, I couldn't care less. But think hard about it. How can you be a good parent if your body is failing you? Your responsibility is to yourself first. That is the only way you're going to be available for your children or for people who need you. That's, you know, I feel that's how I feel about it. In the beginning, I made all these excuses. I felt like I don't have time for this. I used to work over 60 hours a week. I don't have time for this. That's what I told myself. And then, but it's an investment to yourself. If you really want to be the best caregiver, a parent, a brother, sister, wife, to anybody in your life, you gotta be the best. You gotta be the best to yourself. That's the only way you can be the best to the others.
And I think that's a good note to end on. So thank you, Maggie, for being here on this video. And
Yeah, so if you would like to learn more about this, please let us know. We can do another video about this. We through our research, we have accumulated a wealth of knowledge. We're more than happy to share it with you.
Yeah, exactly. And lastly, remember, do not let anxiety define who you are. We will see you sometime. We'll do another video together soon. But I will see you on the next video. Bye for now. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be the first to know. Namaste.